What we're doing here in hand building class this morning is learning how to make strong joints between pieces of leather hard clay. Up to now we've been working with soft slabs, which are nice and bendy, and you can punch texture in them, and you can work fast and just join pieces of slab together by squishing. That makes it possible to work really fast and have fun, but you're going to make organic, slumpy, possibly asymmetrical, possibly not perfect things. When you let clay dry about halfway, not all the way bone dry, but when enough of the water has evaporated from it that it's stiffer, it's still a little bit flexible. It still has some water content, so it still feels cool. Water is evaporating from it and cooling it. But it's not yet bone dry. Bone dry clay has changed color to a lighter color. We call that bleaching out. Once clay has started to change color on the edges, it's too dry to build with. So one of your first tasks will be to roll out some slab and be letting it dry while you make your plans. People always ask me, well, how long does it take for a soft slab to get stiff enough to build with? And that depends on how wet the clay was to start with, what you've got it sitting on to dry, what the weather is like. If you put a slab out in the hot Florida sun, it might only take 10 or 20 minutes. If you leave it wrapped up tight in plastic on your shelf, it'll stay wet until you unwrap it. It also depends on where in the room your clay is sitting, depending on where the air handler is blowing on it. The moral is you have to make a plan and you have to follow up and keep track of your material. If it gets to be a nice leather hard, but you're out of time to work that day, you can wrap it up in plastic and keep it the way it is until you're ready to make something with it. I have these two boxes here. They both look a little bit like loaves of bread, but they were made from the same paper pattern. This is the shape for the bottom and the top. This is the shape for the square for the sides, and I made it easy for myself. The long sides are twice as long as the sides. So I know I'm going to need 2 of these, and 2 of these, and 2 of these when I start to build this thing. This one has a lid that comes off. This one has a drawer that opens, but they are variations on the same idea. We have some nifty tools to help you build things out of clay, and I'm going to show you how to use these 2 things. This scoring tool and this angle cutter both live in a basket on the table of community tools. When you've used them, please put them back because we only have a few for everybody. I thought I would show you today how to make walls on a rectangular thing where the corners are 90 degrees and walls on a hexagonal thing where the corners are either 60 or 30 degrees, depending on how you measure. And I wanted to show you how to make miter joints. I have some pieces cut here. See, that's the shape of the bottom of this box. I could build joints and just butt the pieces up against each other, flat to flat. Let's see, I need to cut a square. I have those marked out according to my pattern already. And you can see when the clay is rather hard, you can cut it with a knife. When it's bone dry, it'll just crunch. It'll break. So I could just make joints where the pieces are just butted up against each other, flat to flat side. But look, if I make this fit, and then I try to put this end on, because of the thickness of the slab, my measurements aren't going to be right anymore. That may not be obvious now, but it has become obvious to me when I've been building things in the past. It gets worse if the slabs are thicker. See this one, if I have the side up already put on, and then I try the long side, and then I try to put the short side on, the short side is hanging off. And I could just trim it, and I could just wing it and just go from here. But if the point here is to be precise and execute a plan that you have done some work to make, I'm going to show you how to be precise and make your plan work out right. And that is to use this angle cutter. This is a T-shaped piece of plastic with two wires. One of them is a 45-degree angle, and one of them is a 60-30, whichever way you want to measure it. I know that I want the walls of this rectangular box to stand up straight. So I want the angle between the floor and the wall to be a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to use the 90-degree cutter. Let's put this to the side. And it helps a lot to remember to hold the thing with the long side upright. You rest the flat end of the tool on the table and just pull the wire along the side of the slab, and look, it makes a very neat 45-degree cut. There's a 45 and another 45. I'm going to go all the way around all the edges of this floor. And the long end also needs a 45-degree cut. And it's going to need a 45 at the corners also. So I'll do that. And one of the short pieces for the end will also need a 45 at the bottom and on each side. And if you hurry too much, you stop being quite so precise. Woodworkers have assured me that making this kind of joint, which is called a miter joint, gives you a bigger area of contact between the two sides. It'll help make the joint more sturdy. But because the clay is now leather hard, it is not true that I can just smash it and have it stay. It might stay today, but as the clay dries and is fired, it'll come apart. So this is how to make a really sturdy, serious joint that will last longer than we will. And that's to use the scoring tool. This is a nifty item. You could just use your needle tool and make scratches, but every gesture just gets you one scratch. This guy, which has a safety feature that breaks pretty quick, but it has a retractable cover. But when the retractable cover is pulled off, you get 6 needles sticking out, so you get 6 scratches per gesture. And you need to really disturb the surface of the clay. You need to make scratches in more than one direction. You need to make it rough and the scratches deep. You want to really dig in there and rough up the clay, because what we want to happen is we want the clay particles to really interknit. We're not just gluing something on. It's like making a broken bone heal. And I'm going to do this on one of the short ends. And then we use a kind of solder. This is slip. It's just gooey clay from the reclaim bucket. Ideally, construction slip should be, they say, the consistency of mayonnaise. But we use what we got. And this is nice and thick and gooey. And I'm going to brush some of this slip along one of the two surfaces I just roughed up with a scoring tool. And now I'm going to put the two pieces together where I want them to be joined and really do some fingertip smashing, maybe even a little wiggle along with the smash, because I'm getting those two rough surfaces to really mix together on a micro level. And when you've made a clay thing with a 90-degree angle like that, it's very vulnerable to being bumped. The best thing I can do to protect it and make it strong is to put another wall on it. This forces us to think three-dimensionally in a very concrete way. Now I'm putting this guy where it fits on the side and pressing that seam in, and the bottom. And it may be the case that slight irregularities and imperfections in the shape I cut will become obvious. And in that case, we'll do some trimming as we need to. But we're not quite done. Even though we've scored and slipped and pressed them together, there's one more thing to be done to make it really sturdy. And that's to take a coil of soft clay, clay that's plastic, clay, the consistency it comes out of the bag, and just make a skinny coil with it. You can do that on the table or in your hands or whatever. It's not, it doesn't have to be particularly capital P perfect. And you press this coil on the inside of the angle. You press it in with your finger. At first, it reminds me of a welding bead. You want to really push it in there. And then you get to see one of the best uses of the modeling tool called the sharp stick. You can take this straight plane of the sharp stick and push it into the corner and then pull the tool sideways. And you can simultaneously be really forcing some of the clay from the coil into that joint and compressing the clay in the way you want it to stay. And you can also be making yourself a neat corner again. The one thing that this tool is not so great at is right in the corner because it's pointy. So you can take this tool, the round end of the tool, and accomplish almost exactly the same thing, but not end up with the mess that the point would make in the corner. Do not be concerned if the two clays aren't quite the same color. They get a lot more alike when they dry fired and they got glaze on them. And that's, you can come back when it's dry with the green scrubby pad and clean up any roughness that you don't like. But these joints are now fairly sturdy, and as a last step, you can clean them up and neaten them with the same sharp tool on the outside and make that corner sharp and neat by pulling the tool sideways, parallel to the seam, the joint. And that would go. You can also use a roller to roll across it. So that is the use of the angle cutter and the scoring tool to make nice 90-degree angles. The other side of this tool makes it possible to cut a different angle on the edge of your slabs. That makes it possible to make a 6-sided thing precisely and neatly. So I thought I'd do a little bit of that. But remembering, even though this is a 6-sided thing, the angle between the floor and the walls is still going to be a 90-degree angle. Now is where I have to really keep track of what's the top and bottom and what's the left and right on these squares. But I'm going to cut a 90-degree all around the sides of this base. And I drew the base using a compass and a protractor and a ruler, and we can revisit geometry together if you want to do such a thing. I did it to make my life easier so that each one of these sides is 4 inches long, which is the same size square I already have. There's nothing that says it has to be a beehive hexagon. It could be a hexagon that's longer than it is wide. I mean, it can be really tall. It could be very short. I'm still making 90-degree cuts, 45-degree cuts on the base. And I want a 45-degree cut on the side of the side that's going to attach to the base. But I want a 30-degree cut on the two sides. So I'm going to turn this over, and once again, still using it with the longest plastic part vertical for that side. And it takes off less clay. It's a sharper angle. And I'm going to put this kind of where it goes. I'm going to do the same thing on this slab. This one looks thicker. So starting with a 45 degree for the bottom, and a 30 for each side. And then score everything again. And goop it up with slip again. two side pieces fit together the way we want them to, and they attach to the bottom the way we want them to, and all the work of making a joint is just the same. So since I used these two boxes as examples, I just want to fill in the last gaps. How would you make a top curve like that and have an arch? And how would you give it feet like that? How do you make a drawer? Well, right now I'm just going to show you the bones of what you need to understand to make a lid curve. Because if we had a flat leather hard slab, you could make a flat lid, but you couldn't make it arched like that. So I have just now made this bottom of a box, and I rolled out a fresh, wet, floppy slab. If I had texture rollers, I could give it some kind of pattern. That's available to you. Today I'm just going to show you. I take the same pattern piece this is the size and shape of the floor, and I'm going to put it down on this soft slab and cut a piece of slab generously larger than I'm going to ultimately need it to be. And if I was going to decorate it with some kind of texture, I would do that here. This is now the top. I'm going to take it over to my leather hard box and turn it upside down and drape it, kind of gently urging it to sink down a little bit. You want not to get it wrinkled, and you don't want to stretch it any more than you have to. Kind of like putting a pie crust in a pie pan. Now it's got a sag. It's draped. This is using the box as a drape mold. And I would let this sit until this slab is leather hard. I could put it out in the sun, and that might take a half an hour. I could leave it on my shelf with a little plastic draped over it and leave it overnight. When this soft slab has become leather hard, I would flip it over, put it where I want it to be, take a pencil or a needle and draw some lines underneath where the top meets the sides, trim it off there, and do all those same things. Make the scoring, score this side, put slip on it, put the lid on. This is floppy, remember, I'm just giving you the idea. Really seal it down. And then you have a choice. You could cut it around the edges, maybe with a key, and have a lid that lifts off. Or you can cut a hole in the side and build another box that slides in, and that's a drawer. That's another discussion for another time. I just wanted you to know And not all lids have to be curved. They don't all have to look like loaves of bread. But if you want an arch, that is a way to do it. The way to give it feet that it stands up on is when it's still leather hard, it hasn't gotten bone dry yet, but it's stiff enough to stand up to some handling. Turn your box upside down and cut and shape little blocks of clay that'll fit on the corners, score them, smash them down. That's one way to make your box sit up like a piece of furniture. And that's enough for today. If you have questions, you know how to reach me.